This week on the show, photographer Steve Brokaw. I'm model Roxanne Kelly.
And I'm photographer Brian Fisher.
And this is TWiP GLAM.
Hey, Roxanne, how's it going?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm happy to be back on the air. You?
Oh, definitely. It's been a long time.
For those that are new to us, we are returning after a very long hiatus from our previous show.
Too long.
And we're happy to jump back into it with Steve Brokaw. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Roxanne. It's really nice to be back on the show with you.
Awesome.
I ran into Steve while attending the Out of Chicago conference, and we got along great. And I thought,
that was fun.
That's going to be our first person right there.
Awesome.
Right.
So, Steve is a commercial photographer, does a lot of commercial fashion, and his work is sublime. So here he is. Steve, tell us how you got into photography.
First of all, sublime. I love it. You know, I don't think I've ever been called sublime before, so that's really nice.
We're going to be proving that here shortly.
Yes.
No, I've been doing photography as long as I can remember, and I've been holding a camera pretty much my entire life. But over the last about 8 years, I got into model photography, and that's moved on to more fashion and portfolio work for both new and developing and experienced models, mainly for their book, and a lot of work recently for social media. So social media images for both the models and for agencies. So I primarily work out of a studio here in downtown Indianapolis, and I've been doing this almost nonstop, like I said, for about the last 6 to 8 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how do you go about, because I've seen you obviously working in LA, Chicago.
Right.
How do you find those clients that are outside of your region?
Yeah, it's taken a while. Like I said, I've been doing this for 8 years, but really for about the last four, it's been very, very active. So I'm just connect with everybody socially. I connect with people through my contacts. So what I'll do is that I'll work with other photographers that I know. And let's say they come back from a trip to LA and they'll recommend, hey, we went to this location, or we work with this agency or this client, and they'll introduce me. Or I'll just do a social media search and find out, let's say, commercial agents in LA or commercial agents in New York, and I'll reach out to them and start a dialogue. And occasionally, not all the time, of course, I'd like it to be more often, but I would say 25% of the time there's some connection there. And so they'll say, when you're in town, look us up and we'll arrange something. So it's generally been through word of mouth. And now it's gotten to the point of where a lot of people are reaching out to me. So it's starting to turn around slightly, but I still spend a lot of time just using social media to connect up with people.
That's great. It's a good avenue.
Yeah, it works out pretty well.
I think a lot of us have a hard time with that initial call. Calling up and saying, hey, I'm so-and-so. This is what I can do for you.
Right, exactly. That's really difficult for commercial clients. So if you're, let's say, trying to do a brand or a boutique, but if you have a portfolio, and if you lead with your portfolio and lead with a clean pitch, a lot of times, at least they'll take a look at your work. I think also what you have to do, you have to make sure that you focus your contact with people that are interested in your type of work. So if you're, let's say, an editorial fashion photographer, and you look at an agency's book and it's primarily editorial fashion, you might have an opportunity to go there. But if they do, let's say, a lot of seniors work or runway work, and you have nothing that's in your portfolio that meets that, then it's going to be less of a chance that they'll connect up with you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So definitely more than one book if you're trying to be in more than one field.
I think so. I tend to be fairly focused. So my book tends to be pretty much what we'll be looking at tonight. And so I try to be pretty focused on what I look at, what I work with. It's primarily my strong suit. I do get into other things. So other than fashion, I do portrait work, I do beauty work, but primarily my bread and butter is the editorial fashion and portfolio work.
Okay. I know. I can't wait to see it.
Well,
Great.
Let's jump to our first photo.
Let's do it.
Beautiful.
So pretty. It's like, what is she gonna say?
No, actually, what I was thinking is Roxanne does this pose.
Yeah. I really like her. I like her wardrobe, and her hair is just so pretty,
Right.
and those cheekbones.
Yeah, this was actually taken out in LA about 4 months ago, and this was one of the deals where I reached out to an agency in Los Angeles by the name of Willow Model Management, and I told them that I was going to be in town, and I asked them to send. I was going to rent a studio, so I rented a studio in downtown LA, and rented it for 2 days, and we arranged for a series of models to come in, and we just scheduled like 2 hour blocks of time, and it was almost like an assembly line. And this young lady is fairly experienced. She's young, but she's fairly experienced, and she was super easy to work with. She had absolutely no need to direct her. She knew her body, she knew her angles, she knew her poses, and she knew her lights. So it was really fun to work with her.
That's always a knowing your angles is huge.
It is.
And as a model, that's something that you have to learn kind of fast, or else you don't make it anywhere.
I agree, Roxanne. And the thing that I do is, like I said, I spend a lot of time, probably a quarter of my work is with new faces or people that are in the development stage. And I spend a lot of time directing, and I've actually become quite good at it. And so what happens, unfortunately, with somebody like Clementine here, is that I didn't have to direct her, and you almost feel a little uncomfortable when you've shot for 15 minutes and you have to send a thing,
Yeah.
and the model just moves. So that's really makes it easy on the photographer, and the quality of the images show quite a bit too.
Those are my favorite when you just click with with a
Right,
photographer
right,
as a model, and the whole shoot just goes flawlessly. And you show, maybe the photographer shows you a picture here or there. You're like, all right,
exactly.
yep, we're nailing it. This is what we were looking for.
Right. And what I also like about models like Clementine is that they can look at the mood board, and I always have a mood board when I shoot, or at least whether I've sent it in advance or I bring it to the shoot with me. And you say, hey, look, I want to try to get this type of look. And they very good at trying to interpret the look and bend their body to the right angle, or move their face to the light, or let their hair flip a certain way, or let the clothes lie a certain angle. And that's why I like working with people like this.
Definitely.
So this looks like it's just a simple softbox over your head. I don't see any real fill underneath.
It is. And what you're going to find, Brian and Roxanne, is most of the images that I'm going to show you tonight are basically one light setups, and that's what this was. So what I did was, the studio is called FD Photo Studios in downtown LA, and they had all the equipment that was rented. So I brought my own equipment, but I didn't use it. So I was actually using I think it was a 53-inch Octabank and some Pulsey Buff Einsteins for this look. And so there was actually a series of windows behind me. So this was a south-facing, so the windows were north-facing. She was south-facing, so we had a little bit of fill from the windows. And this was just a large octabox, slightly to the right, so camera right, probably a little less than 45 degrees, and probably 45 degrees high.
So just to clarify, when you were saying you rented a studio, you got these models from a agency, this
Correct.
is all for your own portfolio, for your own
No, this is
building.
for theirs. So
Oh, got it.
so this so I was actually, they gave me the mood board. So they said, hey, these are the type of portfolios that we'd like to have for the models. So
Got
there were
it.
9 models, and they had, most of them were not brand new, but they were fairly new. 2 or 3 of them were still in the development stage, and they had very specific looks. And I think one of the reasons why they wanted to use me is, again, you'll see that most of my work is in black and white, and they almost all had on the mood board, they wanted some black and white images for their portfolio. And so these actually are in their portfolio.
Very nice.
Get it.
Moving out of the studio.
Yep. This was actually a shoot that we did for a local boutique here in town that hired us to do some of their fall fashion. And we did this. This was actually last summer, so it was shot in the summertime. And we had a friend who had a condominium that she was moving out of. So this was photo shoot. I mean, this was shot in location in an old condominium or a fairly new condominium, and this was all done with natural light. So there was a bank of skylights above her, and the light was very, very strong. So it was coming directly over. So what we did throughout the shoot, we were just moving the model around the light, and it was an interesting shoot because it was summertime. It was fairly hot, and so they were wearing sweaters and jackets and scarves, and starting to sweat. And I was perspiring quite heavily too because the place wasn't air conditioned because they had shut it down.
Oh no.
And it was an interesting shoot, but we got some really good looks, and all of it was natural light.
Yeah, the reflected light really does bring out her jawline.
Right. Yeah, what we did was we had a series of reflectors. So the reflectors were camera right. The light was coming in almost directly overhead, and you can kind of see how on her left side, so camera right, you see a little bit of shadow. The light was so strong, and so there was actually a reflector that filled that in, or it would have been pitch black.
I see.
The why sweaters in the middle of summer?
Well,
Well, it
because
was
they were
for
it's
fall
a fall
fashion.
fashion.
Oh,
Yeah,
I missed that bit.
the place that hired him wanted to do a
Got
fashion
it, got
element
it.
for their fall
Right.
collection.
Yeah, this was for a boutique.
Okay. Yeah, that you get a lot of people taking stuff off. I've done jackets once before, and it was like, jacket on, jacket off, jacket
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
You know what? With wardrobe choices, I always feel like the opposite. I'm never warm at a shoot. I'm always cold.
Well, it's true, and that's what we do actually in the studio. Is in the summertime, it's actually hotter for me, but it's always a little warmer. Because people are changing, they've got the fans going. It tends to be a little cooler for the models, so we always keep it a little warmer. And then in the wintertime, it's always cranked up pretty hot.
Yeah. I love that. I'm always cold.
Yeah.
I love the makeup on this model. I feel like they had to have accentuated her cheekbones.
I was going to say those cheekbones, they really come out and grab you.
That's crazy.
Actually, not that much. I mean, every image obviously is post-processed, but this was a really interesting shoot. And so what I do is once a month, there's a local agency here in town that has a model boot camp every month. So they have new models that come in, anywhere from 4 to 10 models, and I'm on her cycle list. So I'm usually every other month or every month. They'll bring the new models in, and I give a presentation on what it's like to work with a photographer, what it's like to work in a studio, how to do it professionally, the business of photography, and then we do a photo shoot. And the photo shoot is basically to show them what it's like to work with a photographer. Well, this gal, her name's Kiona, was amazing. First time we shot with her, and she was a very tall but very slender model. And I mean, I just like instantaneously said, wow, I've got to test with her. So about a week later, I reached out to the agency, and she came in, and I had one of my go-to makeup artists come in and make her up. And I asked her just to bring in a bunch of clothes. And so she just layered things up. And
I love it.
I actually used her 3 weeks later for an editorial magazine that was published. So it was just, she just has this look, very edgy, very hard. Her hair was very wild. But the way this was lit was we had a 27-inch Octabank, a deep Octa, and it was approximately directly over, so direct to access to camera. And it was approximately 6 feet high, aiming down at her. So the chiseling of her jawline was primarily due to shadowing.
Got it.
Yeah, the deeper octaboxes tend to put out relatively linear light.
Right.
It doesn't tend to have that very soft look. The shallow ones do.
Right.
I really like the sort of the darkness of the jacket around the edges, then the lighter denim, looks like denim,
Yeah.
and then the black shirt. It makes these two vertical lines that they sort of define her more than you would normally see the definition by the outer line of your subject.
Yeah.
And even though she's lifting up her shirt, that's not what you focus on.
Yeah, I didn't even recognize it at first.
Yeah.
It took me a minute to go, oh, belly button.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. No, I like that it draws you to her face and then your eyes go down from there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why if you look at her face, it's a lot brighter than her belly. And the jacket has got the lighting from, the angle of the light. And the way I position her off the background, about 8 feet off the background, you get a little bit of spill onto the background, but not much, just enough to cut her out. So not a whole lot of post-processing on this image.
Yeah, those
That's good.
cheekbones on the jaw create such a striking V shape
Yeah,
and a triangle with the eyes. And of course, your eyes go to triangles.
right.
It really works. I
It
like
really
that a lot.
does.
Yeah,
I know this person.
You do?
Well,
yeah,
she was at the class.
Oh, okay.
yeah. Yeah, she's a professional model based in Chicago, and she actually reached out to me probably about, I'm going to say, 4 months ago, and she wanted some work, some more edgy work for her portfolio. A lot of her portfolio is very soft, glam, and so she wanted some more edginess. So I told her to bring some black jackets and white t-shirts and black shirts, and just let her hair go wild. So I brought in a go-to makeup artist that I use and hairstylist, and we just really went to work on her eyes, darkened them up, darkened her lips up, messed around with her hair. And Gabia is got the most amazing ability to pose and emote. It's stunning. So I actually hired her for the Out of Chicago workshop. So she was one of the models for us that Brian got to work with.
Nice.
And so she was really good.
Yeah, just superb. Actually, it kind of felt like cheating. Because
Yes.
I'm just going to
Easy.
stand here and hold the camera and let amazing things happen in front of me.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. I mean, especially in the modeling world, it's very easy to do standard posing, the emotion, the part lip. But somebody like this, she can do so many expressions. She can change her look on a dime. You can be talking and laughing, and then the camera comes up, and she gets back into camera mode. And she can growl, she can yell, she can do all types of looks. It's really stunning how much emotion she can pull out of a look.
Yeah, I really enjoyed shooting with her. I did some stuff where I was trying to get outside of the box of what the other people in the class were doing,
Right.
and she just followed right along without any
Right.
issues. It was pretty refreshing, actually.
Yeah.
And that is true because if you're in a workshop and you're working with a model, and I brought in 3 models, so there'd be a little bit of variation, but I figured that most people would be having a lot of the same looks with the same model, even though we did 3 different lighting looks. And what was nice is when I looked through some of the portfolios of the images, Gabia had completely different looks with every photographer, and it's just because she really knows how to work it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
What? Okay. I understand now. It just looks like she had like garters on, but it's
That's exactly what I thought.
where the rips in the
I was just
pants
like, that
are.
is the most unusual
Torn
choice.
Yeah, it's just because they're both around the same areas on her
Yep.
legs. That's too funny.
Yeah, this was a test. This is Gracie. She's actually based. She's out in LA now. She was local, and she wanted some work for a portfolio. And again, she had what I would call a fairly good but standard portfolio. A lot of the stuff that you'd normally see, and she wanted to put in a little bit more edginess, a little bit black and white, a little bit to show her angles, mess her hair up a little bit. So she came in and we just did the same type of work. This was one light, as you can probably tell by the shadowing. It's camera. The light is camera right. This is lit with an Electron Studio light, and it's got a 43-inch Octabank, and camera right about 6 feet high, and aiming down at her. And I've got her probably set about 8 feet away from the background. It's just fashion gray background, and the light is probably about 4 feet away from her, and I'm standing right in front of the light. And so because of the size of the light, I'm not casting a shadow, and you're getting a nice soft look. And because of the majority of the hot spot is on her face, it's a little crisper up there. And so yeah, she was again very good. She's got a very what I would call a European look to her. So a lot of angles, edginess, and so she was really good to work with. So she's now out in LA.
Nice.
Presuming this is a full frame camera, what focal length are you kind of favoring?
I have three lenses I go with. So I'm shooting with a 50 millimeter 1.4. So this is all Nikon kit. I shoot with a 24 to 70 2.8 and then a 70 to 200. And on this, I'm shooting at the 24 to 70 and I'm at about 50 millimeters. So
Okay.
I'm standing probably about 6 feet away from her.
Yeah, you're pretty close in.
Right. So generally, what I'll do is that close stuff I'll use the 50 millimeter mid body 9 by 12 full frame. I mean full body I'll go with the 24 to 70, and then for beauty work and tight portfolio work I'll do the 70 to 200.
Yeah, I tend to like to be at about 85 millimeters indoor.
Right.
And then I shoot a lot of outdoor glamoury stuff on beaches, and I end up at 135
Right.
and stick with the little lightweight primes.
Primes are great.
Yeah.
They're lightweight. The focal lengths are just amazing. The aperture is great. Now the thing that's interesting for me, I primarily shoot with a fairly tight aperture, so almost everything that you're seeing tonight is in the f8 to f9 range. So I have a pretty tight aperture on these things. So what's good for me is that I move around a lot when I shoot. And because it's such a good depth of field, I can step in a foot, step back a foot, and it still stays in focus.
Nice.
Nice. So the shirt is semi-transparent.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a
Modeling
little
point
bit.
of view.
Yeah.
Does that bug you ever?
No, I think it's usually better that way.
You like it?
It's
Yeah,
a little bit like a tease.
yeah. The white shirt, the white button down will never go out of style. It's the
Right.
Levi's of the modeling world.
Yeah.
The but I like it. It works nicely here. If you had gone with an opaque white, it would have been too hot.
Too much, yeah.
Yeah. Instead, you got this nice little lines of outline.
You know, her arms look so long.
They do look long. Is she
I bet
tall?
she has really long legs.
She is a very tall girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the people that I work with are what I would call traditionally editorial fashion size, 5'9" or taller. Most of the gals are size 0 to size 4, I would say. And so most of the people are pretty long and lanky. It's kind of difficult for me sometimes because I'm a shorter guy. I'm only about 5'9", and so almost always I'm looking up. So I put the apple boxes to good use. I stand on those regularly.
Oh, this one I like. I like the texture added by shadows like this, and the light coming through a screen or whatever it is, like a window.
Right. Yeah, this is a model that I've worked with probably 20 times. She's a friend of mine that I've worked with probably for the last 4 years.
Okay.
And she has gone through a lot of physical changes, long hair, short hair. She's she's gotten taller. She's lost weight. So over those times, we've worked together to get different images, and I'd say 3/4 of the work that I've done with her is in studio. But she had an interest in doing some work with window lights. So we actually were in her grandmother's house, and was just sitting in a room, and it was just a window light, and we had brought her mirror in from her bedroom, and so she's kind of leaning up against a mirror that my assistant is just kind of hidden behind it and just propping it up. And so that's just pure window light. So it's got reflected light from the mirror, and it's the window light coming across. And if I were to take that image with the window closed, it would be pitch black. So the only lighting is that window.
Yeah, it was clever to use the mirror.
Yeah, the mirror looks almost like it's distorted.
Bent.
Yeah, it's bent a little bit. It's one of those cheap ones you probably get at Kmart, and
Okay.
it's in a real cheap frame. So I have a guy that's actually standing behind it, holding it, and so she's leaning up against the top of it, so it's bowed a little bit.
Okay, that makes
I
sense.
figured it was either really old or really cheap.
No, I think it's really cheap.
Her lips kind of get funky in the shadow. Everything else I
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, I would say that, but it's one of the things that drew my eyes.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, this was a series I probably took. We shot probably for about 2 hours in this room, sitting on the floor, sitting on chairs, sitting on a bed, moving the mirror around. And what I found is that the images either worked or they didn't work. So it's where the lines of the shadow fell, and a lot of them look like she had black eyes. A lot of them look like she had no lips.
Mm-hmm.
So it was tough selecting, but this actually worked out really well. So several of these images went into her portfolio.
Nice.
Excellent.
Good for her.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh man, this model makes me want to go and take pictures.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I see wet hair in your future.
Yeah, I like this look. She looks
Mm.
kind of innocent yet like a child almost, but the way her facial expressions portray something completely different. Like
Yeah,
she has a secret.
this is a model. Her name's Kateri, and she's works with an agency that's based out of St. Louis, but she's up in the Chicago area.
Hmm.
And what's interesting is that she is actually a fitness model, so she's very, very fit. But she's actually unlike a lot of the models I work with. She's about 5'6", I would say. So she's a little, I wouldn't say a little shorter. She's tall, but she's proportionally perfect for her size.
Hmm.
But of besides, in the images we're looking at tonight, besides Gabia, she's probably got the best ability to emote. And so we just asked her to, give this kind of an innocent look. And so we wanted to kind of have it as an opposite towards the way we had her made up. So we wet her hair down. And, a lot of people think you just put, water in her hair. That probably took an hour to get it that way.
Yeah.
That's with mousse and
Hmm.
a hairstylist and a hairstylist assistant to get it that way, and really did a heavy dose of makeup, really darkened her eyes up quite a bit. And then we said, okay, now give us a very innocent type look. And so this image was actually shot with a Profoto light. And so the camera was, I mean, the light was approximately, I would say, 4 feet away from her. And it was on plane with the lens, and it was just over my head, just aiming slightly down. So you get a nice shadow and even shadowing on both sides of her face. So yeah, she was great. So we did probably about 6 or 7 looks with her. And this was a test for the agency for her portfolio. So she was great to work with.
Yeah, the hands
Yes, I
are
was
amazing.
just gonna say that.
They climb to the subject, which is, and then the hair creates that again linear lines coming back down, and you just stare right at her lips. It's pretty amazing.
Well, a lot of
Yeah, and
times that's one of the most challenging things about modeling is what do you do with your hands? It's like that movie. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah. Yeah, Roxanne, I was going to say the same thing
Yeah,
that,
she's
if
got
you,
it.
you can get somebody that knows how to pose and does a great job posing, but then you look back through the images and you see their hands are in a fist or their hands are strange. And so the ability just to hold your hand a certain way is amazing. And she was great at it.
And she knows how to play it too. I mean, you want their angles to be making your hands narrow. You don't want
Right.
to do this or, that's something Brian taught me actually.
One of the things I've actually found is that if I ask a model, particularly a new one, to make their hands look awkward, it has the exact opposite effect.
Yeah, as a matter of
so
fact,
funny.
when I do a shoot, I'll always do a tight shoot like this. So it'll be chest up. And I always ask the model to bring their hands to their face. So, put your palm to me, touch your lips, slowly bring your hand across your face, stop, go fast, and you'll get a few shots. And it seems like people who know, how to open their hands up properly, you can get just an amazing look. And again, they kind of giggle a lot of times, especially new models, thinking that it looks really stupid, but you can hit it every once in a while. It just looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a superb image, and I think the choice of a little softer, closer in light
Mm-hmm.
makes it.
Yeah.
That if that had been a harder line around her jaw, it would have distracted from the hands.
Right.
And the hands need to stay the sharp element.
This is almost like a horror movie where she's the kid.
Just a little.
Right? Doesn't it remind you of that? I love it. This is
Is
beautiful.
it windy,
so.
or did you move your model around?
No, this is actually in studio, and so I have a hair fan
Okay.
sitting camera left. And the way I've done this is this was for her portfolio, And so I'd actually take this fan, and it's probably, I'm going to say, a little bit bigger than an office type fan. So it's a standard hair fan, and I actually mounted it onto a C stand. So I just hooked the handle onto a C stand and propped it up probably about 3 feet away from her, and turned it on low, and just had her, shake her hair around, and had the hairstylist come in and pull the hair apart a little bit. And so you just try to get a little bit so it kind of frames in her face. And I actually asked her to pull her chin down just slightly so I could focus on her eyes, and that so the hair just kind of went under her chin. And I thought we nailed it on that one.
Definitely.
Very nice.
It's all you can see is that triangle of her face, and that's really neat.
I had somebody suggest using a commercial, like a carpet cleaning fan with a speed control on it. It's the big squirrel cage
Right.
fan you see
The big
people
one.
drawing things with, but then using a commercial speed control to bring it down to a reasonable level. And that apparently that's very quiet, very pleasant to be around in your studio compared to some poor little fan working like crazy.
Yeah, this fan, the nice thing about this, and again, that's if you don't have an assistant, you have your fan on the floor, you're going to blow the hair up, and sometimes you don't want that. So this fan is very portable. It's powerful, very, very powerful. As a matter of fact, I always ask the models at the beginning, do you wear contacts? Because if they do, I actually ask them to close their eyes until I shoot and say, okay, now open them. Or if not, they're blinking.
Yeah,
And
that's exactly what I was going to say, actually. I was going to add that when you're behind that fan, it is very uncomfortable for your eyes,
it is.
especially if you have
And
lighter eyes or sensitive eyes.
right. But you can use all types of things to move hair. I've seen people use like leaf blowers. I've seen people use just hair dryers. I've seen people use foam cord boards and have somebody flap it. But I've had this fan for about 3 years, and it works perfectly for me. And like I said, I just mount it on a C stand and have it about head height to her and just blow it straight across.
Yeah, the technique of looking down and then coming up is, well, in the beach world, we use that all the time just because of the sun.
Right.
But I can imagine for a little fan protection, that's great.
Yeah, it works out well.
Oh, man, this model is stunning.
Yeah, I love that hair.
Yeah, the hair's really cool. It looks like, what's it called? Fishtail.
You would know that. I would not.
It's like a backwards braid.
Yeah, this actually was a shoot for a hair salon. So there's a local salon. It's actually, they have locations in LA. They have locations elsewhere, but they have a couple locations here, and they're based here. It's called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And so we had was hired they had a bunch of hairstylists work with a bunch of models, and they were all taking pictures in front of concrete walls. They had pictures in front of sweeps, sitting in the chair, and I wanted to try to do something different. So I actually took this model and walked across the street into a tattoo parlor. So this is actually in a tattoo parlor in the back so she's sitting on one of the tables where they would do piercings.
Oh.
So I just walked around her and took pictures. It's almost like going into a carny shop. There's images everywhere, but this one was a tight one, and the idea was to focus on the hair. And this was lit with a simple Westcott rapid box with a speed light, and it was pretty far away to make it a little punchier, and so that we could drop off the light in the back. And so, yeah, she was great. And again, she was heavily made up, so the jawline was heavily chiseled with makeup, and obviously she had red lips on. So when we put it to black and white, it turns almost jet black. But she was great. She did an amazing job.
Her lips are, wow, the shape of them is exotic.
Yeah,
Is that the model or the makeup artist?
that's the model.
Okay. I like the way that her face mirrors the face in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That works.
yeah. We did that on purpose.
I bet. Well, you have to do most things on purpose to get them to look right.
Yep.
Yeah, you have,
Well, you have to have it in I think you really need it in your head what you want to try to accomplish, especially if you're shooting for somebody. Even though I do a lot of testing, where it's for my portfolio, if you have a client or a model that wants something for the portfolio, we always put together a mood board. And we always try to work off that mood board to say, okay, she wants this type of look or he wants this type of look. And we'll always go through to make sure that we get it. And this was the type of look that they wanted. They did ask me just to go and try to represent my style. So that's why I made it a little edgier, where everybody else was more color, a little bit more focus on the hair. This I just wanted a kind of a impression of the hair.
I like it.
Well, she looks kind of sad too, forlorn.
Well,
Yeah.
as does the picture behind her.
Yes, it's very
Yep.
mood setting.
Yeah, it's great. Fantastic.
Thanks.
Well, this is one of the only ones that hasn't been black and white.
That's true.
Yeah, this actually this was for a clothing line. So I was a second shooter for this look. So I was actually assisting one photographer, and then during the next change, she would assist me. And so this was for a clothing line based in LA. And so they sent in a bunch of clothing that we work with one model, and they actually wanted this in color. So what I do is when I shoot, I actually shoot specifically for black and white or for color. So if I'm shooting black and white, the lighting is going to be different than if I shoot for color. So I generally don't shoot for color and then switch it to black and white. So this was intended to be color. And she was very tall, very lanky. It's got a really good look. And I just basically had her stand and just say, okay, now kind of look completely bored and disinterested. And so I think we got this really nice look. And that's on her hair. That's actually one of those scarves. So I think it's called a universal scarf or a infinity scarf, and just told her to pull it up over her head.
That's awesome.
And I thought it made it kind of a cool looking hoodie.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, the funny thing is, even though it is a color image, everything but the flesh tones is black and white.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Or grays, but still, that's too funny.
Which, if this was 10 years ago, somebody would be like, I did this in Photoshop. It was a red shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're past that.
Yes.
Yeah, you won't see any of those in my where everything's black and white except the lips that
Yeah.
are red. No, you're
Yeah.
not going to see that.
Appreciate not.
We did that in photography class in high school.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Except I did it with a black and white picture and then the dyes and a little tiny paintbrush. Oh, this is going to be in color.
Oh, how funny.
I just love this image. Well,
Well, it's
firstly,
classic.
she's gorgeous.
She is.
But I like the way you've let the light just completely fall off of her shirt to where it's just a silhouette. And because honestly, people with darker skin tones can be a real challenge in black and white because if you have a background that is medium gray or a shirt that's medium gray, their skin tones can disappear on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this was a challenging shoot because I was hired by an agency down in Houston. So I went down to Houston and shot a lot of their models. And I rented a studio that I'd never been into. I didn't know what I was getting myself into in terms of the quality of the studio, the equipment they had, the lighting, the diffusers, the modifiers. So I was a little bit I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it worked out perfectly. And this model was, like you said, she was stunning. Just very, very beautiful, even skin, very ebony looking. So this was shot up against a gray background. We just had her stand probably about 3 feet away from the background. That's why it's a little bit lighter. And this was a Profoto light camera left. And you can see by the shadowing on her face is open a little bit more on camera left than it is camera right. And the modifier was about straight on to her. She was very tall, about 6'2".
Wow.
And so, yeah, she was beautiful. Very, very full lips. The makeup artist did a really nice job on her. And so I really liked the way it came out.
Yeah, it did. It's a very classic look. I like it.
Yeah,
Simple.
it truly is. I can find no fault.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Thanks, Brian.
I like it. Her hands, again, I like her hands in this.
This was actually, again, for her portfolio. She's actually a personal trainer. So she's a dancer, personal trainer, very, very fit. And so her entire portfolio was basically in studio, with leotards on or to show off her her muscles and her fitness or dancing type of looks. And so she wanted something a little bit more editorial for her portfolio. So when she hired me, she said, I don't want everything in studio. So I actually walked her outside of my studio, which is in a big industrial building, and just leaned her up against a brick wall. And those are just lights that are coming across from some industrial light banks that were off to camera left. And I just asked her to look into it. And so you can see it was really punchy, very edgy. So those shadows were just just light that was there.
It's nicely managed, given that it is pseudo natural light.
Yeah.
Right.
You use what you're given.
I like
Right.
the shadow on the side of her face creates this nice little S, almost a Coca-Cola S with the lighting on the hair.
Right.
Intentional or just kind of happened?
That what I actually asked her to do was I said, look, bring your hand up to your face and start so that you're actually looking away from me. So she'd be looking over her right shoulder. I said, just slowly start turning your face to me. And so as she was turning her face, I asked her to keep her hand to her mouth and just slowly turn her face to me. And so we shot, and the idea was I wanted to try to get a look so the shadowing would just highlight her eyes just enough. And so her right eye would start to peek out a little bit. And so I'd get a little bit of chiseling on her nose. She had a very pronounced nose, so I wanted to lengthen out her nose by the way the shadow worked. So that was intentional.
It's well done, and literally just a few degrees and that nose could go south on you.
It could, yeah.
Yeah, but harsh light is hard to control that way.
It is, and one of the reasons why this is in black and white was that I'm working studio, so I control my light completely. I can control the color temperature, but here, I don't know what color temperature that light was coming in, but it was completely funky, and the walls were kind of this industrial green. And so I was getting all types of color tones, and it was bouncing off her face. So
that sounds great.
Yeah.
So black and white was on purpose for that.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Good. Probably like a sodium vapor or some kind of bizarre light.
Something, I don't know.
I do not know who came up with sodium vapor and went, this seems like a great idea. And that's our run of pictures.
Yeah, it was great having you on the show. I'm really happy with all your images. They're so cool.
Beautiful, beautiful work.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
We want to continue to talk to you about your future. Where are you going to take this from here?
Well, like I said, I have a day job, so I've got a full finance job that takes about 60 hours a week, but I still put in 20 to 30 hours a week on the photography side. And so I shoot during the weekends, and I have no immediate plans to change that. So what I do is that I regularly, usually booked up about 2 months in advance, and I schedule usually a shoot once a quarter, either out to LA or New York or Chicago, and then I schedule that out. So for the foreseeable future, that's what I try to do. So right now, it's primarily developed more what I'll call higher end agencies, work with more editorial styled models, and obviously try to get more paying clients. And so right now it's on a good trajectory, and I just want to keep it going.
That's awesome. Well, it's good to have a hobby to keep you busy.
Yes.
Well,
I think
it's a little bit more
beyond
than a hobby,
hobby.
but yeah,
It's true.
it's advanced hobbyist, and I've got a studio, and so got to pay that. So it's worked out really well so far.
Well, where's your favorite locations to shoot besides your studio?
The studio is great because I can control everything, but it's very standard. I've actually enjoyed going out to LA quite a bit for a couple of reasons. One is that you have in one day, you can have the beach, you can have gritty industrial, you can have city life, you can have everything. And access to studio equipment and studios is very easy. Access to shooting outside, shooting in the streets is very easy. And also, there's a abundance of designers, there's abundance of fashion available, and there's abundance of really high-end models. So for me, that's been where I've enjoyed working with the most. But also Chicago is, for me, it's physically very close. Again, it's got a good reputation in the model industry. All the major agencies are represented there. It tends to be a little bit more expensive. surprisingly. And the quality of the studios, I just haven't been able to find as many good studios. But so right now, I think the best place I like shooting outside of my own studio is probably in LA.
Okay.
Very
Probably
cool.
more for the weather too, Indianapolis, compared to LA.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice. It's very even. I like it out there.
I bet.
So I had the opportunity to take a class from you and really enjoyed it.
Mhm.
Are you looking at doing more teaching?
I am. I do at least once a month. I do a new model boot camp. So there's a regular routine workshop that I give. I've done a few workshops here in town where I bring usually 4 to 6 people together and do somewhat like what we did in the out of Chicago. So yeah, I have on my schedule at least twice a year to do a workshop, and what's becoming is more specialized. So very similar to what we did up and out of Chicago, where you have uh, professional models come in and you do headshots, you do full body, you do commercial, you do editorial work. So it's we'll probably do that more and more. It's the demand is probably more than my ability to do it right now from a time standpoint, because doing a workshop takes a lot of time to organize, and it takes a lot of time to schedule, and you have to do it right, or your participants go away saying they wasted their money. So I want to have people get their money's worth. So it takes a lot of planning, and right now the time I can only do 2 to 3 a year.
Yeah.
Well, as the show grows and
Yep.
we have a larger base, we would love to support you in, especially if you're going to come out to LA and do any sort of a thing.
Sure.
We would be on hand for you
Oh,
without
that'd
a
be great.
hesitation.
For sure.
And
Well,
having an audience may help.
Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it. And Brian, your skill in working on more of beach type work, natural light, is something that, is a real area that I need to fill in. So, I could learn a lot from you.
Well, come on up. I got a couch.
Oh,
Beautiful.
so
Love it.
what's the best way for people to reach out and contact you?
Well, I'm super active on social media. I love it. I stay in contact with people with that. So beyond social media, the easiest way to contact me is through my commercial website. So it's a Squarespace site. It's www.stephenbrokawphotography.com. And I can be accessed on Facebook, so just under my name, Stephen Brokaw, or Stephen Brokaw Photography. And I put all my work, what I'm doing, when I'm going to be at different locations. So those are really the best ways to get me through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Instagram's taking off for me, and I mean I use that a lot. So almost everything's under my name. So Stephen Brokaw.
Excellent.
Excellent.
In a future segment on the show, we're going to be showcasing some of our audience's work. If you'd like to have your work critiqued, send it to us at TWiPGLAM@gmail.com. The best way to contact us is through thisweekinphoto.com. Click on the contact link, select our show, and send us a message. Thanks again to the TWiP School for sponsoring this episode, and we will see you next week.